Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. And we're here with great friend David Rose from USXP. How are you, my friend?
Ahoy, Bill. Always great to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So, you guys have recently come out with something that I think is so valuable for our audience of companies that are expanding in the US. And it's a board guide, and it's an instructive tool to help companies establish their boards and make them effective. But do you want to, what was the impetus? Why does the world need a board guide?
Well, the boards do a lot of things. One of the things we've learned working with companies over the last few years is the decision to come to the US market clearly happens at the board level. But what we see on the ground is, all the companies that we work with, we talk to lots of companies, we work with lots of companies, they're rarely adequately prepared, meaning they don't have a proper budget, they don't have a proper go-to-market, they're just coming, but they're not adequately prepared. I personally serve on boards. I've been on boards for a long time. I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And so I just got to wondering, I'm like, how does the decision get made at the board level that yes, let's approve this expense and this risk and go to the US without what seems to be on the receiving end of those sort of things, doing it properly or planning properly as I would do as a board member. So we were just thinking, like, if I'm a board member and a company came to me and said, hey, we want to expand to the US, here's the way I think about it. And we basically created this framework to give boards of European, specifically venture-backed tech companies, a framework to kind of assess two steps. One is, what's the current status of the company? Is it ready to enter the US market? And then the second step is, are they planning appropriately? Are they prepared to enter the US market? And so providing a framework to help boards collectively decide, is the company ready? Or maybe just decide quantitatively they're not ready. So either way, just having a framework that can be repeatable, and hopefully become a standard to help boards everywhere kind of assess US expansion readiness for the companies they serve.
And I suppose if they're not ready, then it's easy to see then what are the remaining elements they need to get together or have established before they would venture into the US. Is that the intention as well, is to give them some goalposts to aim at or waypoints?
When companies come to the US, there's one of two things that are happening. One, they get pulled in, meaning they keep selling more and more and more customers, and eventually they just kind of have to come here and set up operations. It's kind of pull in. And the other is they get pushed in. And so kind of our thesis is, if you're raising professional venture capital anywhere in the world, the only reason you're able to successfully do that because you've convinced a set of investors that you have a shot at creating a generational, category-defining, billion-dollar market leader in a particular segment. And so you get pulled in when you have more and more customers, but you get pushed in after you've pitched your investors a giant TAM number, and they give it to the money. You have to go chase it. And so I think in the latter case, there's really just kind of, you're trying to get prepared. You're not really trying to assess. You're just trying to make sure they're equipped to come. But I think in the first model where they're going to get pulled, it's more of a question mark. Or when are we ready? What do we do? This gives you a framework to kind of determine should we go, and then how to plan. And the second model, it's like, okay, you have to go because you just closed around the funding, but how do you plan? So that's kind of how we would see the framework being used.
Sure. And so when a company doesn't get this right and the board doesn't operate as it should, what are some of the things that could happen or you've seen happen?
Well, there's some classic ones. I think a big one is most companies don't budget adequately for US expansion. And so consistently, the revenue is going to come slower than you forecast or what you hoped. And almost certainly the expenses are going to be higher than you forecast or hope. So that combination of, less revenue and more expenses really puts the cash burn in a critical position very quickly. So again, as a fiduciary at the board, like, one of your primary roles and duties is to ensure the survival of the company. So you want to make sure you understand, like, what the real cash needs are for this US expansion adventure, knowing it could take 18 to 24 months to start getting product market fit and start generating revenue. If you're a fiduciary and you're making a judgment call of whether this company should come, one of the things at the top of the list is make sure they budget adequately and you have enough capital to make it all happen. I think that would probably be at the top of the list for me.
Yeah. And why is it, when you think about the blinders maybe that board members put on, is it generally sort of lack of maturity? They don't have experience at board members or haven't had appropriate training. Why aren't board members as prepared maybe as they should be for this role?
Well, I think in the U.S., what you find, because in Europe, what I'm finding is there's no such thing as an outside director for early stage companies, which means essentially the board is made up of the founders, the investors, right? And for sure, if you look at the makeup of investors, general partners at venture capital firms in the U.S., the vast majority of them are former operators. Like they've run a U.S. business before. They've come from that world. They know a lot of those pieces and parts. But if you look at the makeup of general partners of venture capital firms in Europe, they're mostly finance people, much more so than operators, right? And so have they ever created a Delaware C corporation? Have they ever set up a payroll system? Do they know how accounting works at the credit and debit level? So there's a kind of a difference in experience level. And so I think if you come from the finance world thinking about U.S. expansion, you might think about, okay, this giant TAM number looks good, the market opportunity there looks good, this is very exciting, but not really understand the operational details enough to actually make an assessment, is this budget adequate or not?
Well, and to your point earlier is they don't understand the sort of, it sounds like, the market entry process. So yeah, the fact that those early sales come slower than you think and all that. And so it's easy to be optimistic, but that's probably not the best way to plan.
And I think a lot of those decisions are also anecdotal. So if you've been a venture capital general partner for a number of years, you've kind of seen, there's kind of some signals here. We've seen companies in this, see this signal from this company, they're successful, or seen the signal that they're unsuccessful, which I think is all helpful. But I think if you have an actual framework that you kind of follow and check the boxes, kind of a binary yes, no, ready kind of situation, I think it's just probably a more analytical approach and a smarter approach to give you an outcome versus kind of an anecdotal, hey, I think based on other experiences, this might work.
Yeah, that's cool. And so, a company going through this, I guess as they go through it, is your hope that this is distributed, let's say from the founder to the board members, or the board members pick it up, but that take an individual company, that the whole board, kind of reads this and kind of buys or incorporates this into their kind of standard way of operating?
Yeah, that's our hope, and that what you typically find, who the general partner for a venture capital firm might be on a board of company A, they're probably on 8 other boards that they've invested in, right? So if it gets adopted in one, you kind of understand the framework and you kind of get the value of it. It would make sense that, this is a good approach, a good model. Maybe we should replicate this across the other companies who are getting ready to kind of go through the same process.
Well, yeah, and it just seems like it's one thing if it's kind of one partner, but as you said, the fact that they're not only they are on the board of several companies, but their other partners are on the board of maybe an equal number of companies. So the effect can be really good. So I guess in the process here, is there more that's needed beyond the guide? And do you see yourself doing training for for boards and so on at some point, or is the guide, does it stand alone on its own?
Well, our hope is that kind of initially that the guide will give boards a framework to use. Now, again, we try not to be commercial about what we do, but we have a readiness assessment, right? Where we actually come in, we'll give a 126 data point quant score of a company's particularly readiness to come to the U.S. So if you want to get serious about it, if you like this approach, we've got a quantitative scoring model, we have a playbook, we have a whole go-to-market motion kind of based around what we learn in that. And so if they can self-administer, that's great. If they'd like to have somebody who's done this before and already has a model to administer that as a third party, kind of a third party validation or opinion piece, we definitely have a model that can do that.
Well, I'd imagine too, again, it's one thing to think about an isolated company, but a firm, an investment firm wanting to professionalize how their whole team serves on boards might be quite a different operation, and maybe having some adult supervision for a while to indoctrinate it seems like it would be a really logical,
I
really
think
logical thing to do.
Kind of common interest, for general partners at venture capital firms in Europe, they have a strong desire for these companies to be really successful in the U.S., right? They have the most important driver, the economic one, right? They want that company to be successful. We also want those companies to be successful. So I think the interests are aligned, and we're just trying to share some of the things we've learned to hopefully help those companies. And the more companies that come and the more successful they are, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, this is so exciting. I tell you, as I was flipping through it, it's just so obvious. But of course, most of the best ideas are things that you go, oh my gosh, why didn't somebody do that before? And it just makes so much sense that this would be a big value for companies. So is it okay if I share the link in your contact info in the description below?
We want as many people to see this as possible. So feel free to share the link. We don't have it up on our website yet, but at usxp.co, we'll soon have the link up on our tools page where you can download it from there directly. But yeah, in the meantime, Bill, please feel free to share it anywhere.
Absolutely. Well, we'll do. Thank you, as always, David. It's so awesome to speak with you, and thanks for sharing this with our audience.
Yeah, thanks. Great to see you as always, Bill, and look forward to seeing you in person in May at Select USA this year.
Exactly. Can't wait. Thanks, David.
All right, take care.